Hi guys, this is Vidas,
And Ausra.
and let's start episode 71 of Ask Vidas and Osha podcast. And today's question was sent by Matt, and he writes that he wants to learn proper registrations for standard pieces, Bach, Vierne, Franck, etc., and good registration approaches in general. That's a very broad question, Osha, right?
Well, it is, yes. You could write several doctoral dissertations on this topic.
And in fact, a lot of books have been written concerning separate topics of the registration for Bach, separate for Franck, separate for Vierne, right?
Yes, because we are each of them so different and must be registered differently.
But probably Matt doesn't expect us to give everything, in those few minutes that we are answering questions today. But maybe we could start with some pointers to start with.
Yes, let's do that.
So when a person, let's say, uh, takes a piece of Bach music and is ready to start registering it, right? Maybe has learned some notes with pedals, with hands, and the time approaches that he or she wants to perform it in public, right? And it's time to start registering it. What would you think first when you register the piece? Let's say a chorale-based piece first, like chorale prelude.
Well, you have to think what you want from the piece and how that piece is put together because, like chorale preludes, we are very different. Let's say in Orgelbuchlein. You could have chorale with ornamented cantus firmus, and definitely then you would want to play those different hands on the different manuals and register them differently. Maybe to put a cornet stop for solo voice and like couple soft flutes for accompaniment and couple soft flutes in the pedal.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the possible registration. Or you could do not a cornet but take like a reed stop for a solo voice.
Yeah, usually you could do cornet, reed, then maybe mutation combination like flute 8/4 and 5th, or a third, or a high pitch fifth like 1 and 1/3 to make it more clear. Um, can you play the solo line with the principal alone?
Well, in some cases you could do that
If it's very beautiful.
if it's very beautiful, but that's not an often a case.
In sometimes in modern organs, better solution is to play with 4-foot principal but 1 octave lower. Usually they are better scaled.
Yes.
But first, Tosha, you mentioned you have to discover if the pieces has to be played on one manual or on two manuals,
Yes,
right?
that's the first step.
If the lines have a melody, solo melody or not, and then act appropriately. What if the chorale prelude has to play it on one manual, totally, all parts together, but on one manual with pedal perhaps?
Well, very often such chorales work well for organo pleno.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it depends on the character. Sometimes you don't want to add all the stops together. Maybe just use couple principles.
Should you read the text of the chorale?
Definitely, yes.
Mm-hmm. That will explain to you if the chorale prelude has to be performed loudly or softly in general, probably.
Yes, and you need to find out also for what occasion you will play it. If it's a church service, will it be for a communion or will it be for a prelude? Or if you are playing a recital, you also see in which place you will place it according to the registration. Do you need the soft or loud piece in that place?
Are you starting the recital or ending the recital, or it's something in the middle? Yeah.
Well, but actually what you can know if you are playing preludes and fugues by Bach, that you can easily just do and play them with organo pleno.
And by organo pleno, you probably mean full principal chorus.
Sure.
What's that? Can you spell it out for everybody?
That's principal 8, 4, 2, sometimes even 16 foot principal if the organ has it. And then of course you have to add a mixture. And it depends on your taste and of the organ. You could add other stops to the pleno too.
Maybe a fifth.
Yes, sometimes even tierce.
Tierce works well if the mixture doesn't have thirds.
Yes.
Because in Bach's area, in Bach's time, majority of organs had not only octaves, not only fifths in the composition of the mixture, but also the thirds. So if you add a tierce stop, it's not the same as having a third sounding pipe in the composition of the mixture, which would break, every octave or so. It's not the same, but the general feeling will be similar. It's a little bit spicier than just the fifth and more colorful.
What about pedals?
Pedals also need principal chorus if they have principals, right? In Bach's area, a lot of pedals had only subas and posaune and a manual coupler.
So if you would add like principals on the modern organ, would you supplement it with the posaune 16 foot or not?
If the posaune is, fitting for the chorus registration, then yes. Like in our organ, it's at St. John's Church in Vilnius, I usually add principal 16. We don't have like a proper principal 8, but it's called full bass. It's sort of a little bit similar, at least it's 8-foot stop. A little bit darker than the principal, I would say, but then I would add 16-foot posaune, and then a mixture. Yeah, if we have one. Mixtures can be bright. Don't worry if the sound is very bright in the pedals. It's okay. Then 4-foot principal is also good to have in the pedals. So, but you have to listen for the balance, right, with the manual. Sometimes you can add the coupler with the great, sometimes not, depending on the acoustics, environment, and the occasion.
Yes. So what about French composers that Matt asked?
French composers use different organs, right? Cavaillé-Coll organs for the most of the parts, and it has a lot of differences with the Bach tradition. What probably you would need to start with the knowledge of what's foundation stops with French and what's called anches, fonds and anches in French. Fonds, do you know what fonds means in French?
The mean stops, that's
Mhm.
principals and flutes actually.
They were positioned in Cavaillé-Coll's organ, I think, on the left-hand side of that manual, right? So in Cavaillé-Coll's layout, they had horizontal layout of the stop knobs, and on the left-hand side, they had probably the foundations, 16, 8, 4, all those principals and flutes together, and strings as well in that order. What was on the right hand side?
I think that was reeds.
The left, the what's left, right? Mixtures,
Yes,
reads,
mixtures and
mutations.
reeds. Mutations, that's right.
So every manual had this layout, and positive, récit, and grand orgue also had the same principles, but maybe different kinds of reeds, right? Maybe positive had they called clarinet, maybe récit had oboe, and trompette harmonique, but also the grand orgue had trumpets 16, 8, and 4, right? And I think positive and Grécy also had those trumpets. So in every manual you could have 16, 8, and 4 basically read chorus on the big cavaillé organ in general.
Yes, and I think it's easier to register French music probably than Bach, let's say, because French composers were quite good at noticing, adding in the score what we want. So nowadays you have so many editions where you simply just have to follow directions and to register accordingly. But of course, sometimes it's hard if you have to adjust from, let's say, French style organ to German style organ. That might be a tricky part.
Probably German style organ doesn't have a lot of foundations, right?
Yes.
Maybe they have 8-foot principal and 8-foot flute, and that's it. And you have to have more.
And German mixtures, we are sort of screamier than French mixtures.
What would you do in this case if you had a neo-Baroque organ in the German tradition, but you have to play, let's say, Franck or Vierne?
That's a hard choice.
But you don't necessarily have to play French music.
Yes.
On that
That's what I do probably. I wouldn't choose to play French music on such an instrument, but if I would have to do it, I probably would avoid mixtures at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because we sound very bad in French music on German organ.
Or avoid 16-foot stop in the manual, but play everything 1 octave lower.
If that's possible, yes, that
would
be a good solution.
You see, the left hand part has to go not lower than the tenor C then, because when you transfer everything 1 octave lower, then it's the bass C becomes your lowest note. So if anything goes lower than C, then it's a little bit too low. So guys, I hope this was useful. Do you think, Osha, people can start practicing and registering pieces according to our suggestions now?
I hope so.
And if you have more questions, please send us when you subscribe to our blog at organduo.lt if you haven't done so already, and simply replying to our messages that you receive. All right, we love helping you grow as organists, and remember, when you practice,
miracles happen.